Okay, then let's get started. Hello and welcome to the City Council of Easthampton City Council Property Committee. It is currently 6:03 p.m. Today is November 1st, 2021. We are meeting remotely on Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic and orders from Governor Baker to allow us to conduct meetings remotely. We have a couple items on the agenda today, which I'll just speak about briefly, and then we'll get through the meeting in terms of introducing minutes, public speak time, etc. We have continuing business where we'll be briefly just addressing some ongoing business involving an easement at 32 Payson Avenue. And then we will discuss the easement for the South Street sidewalk at 334 Main Street. And then due to a couple conflicts, I will be recusing myself, and we will invite President Conniff to join in the meeting, and hopefully our other member, Councillor Kwasinski, will be in attendance at that point, but at least we'll have two people for quorum. So we do have, I will ask members of the public if you would like to make any comments to either physically raise your hand or preferably use the raise hand feature, which is conveniently located on most Zoom versions under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. At this time, we do have some minutes from last meeting. I'm trying to find where I put those. Here we go. We have property meetings, property minutes from 10/18/21 provided by Councillor Flood. I looked these over. I don't have any questions. Councillor Flood, any other comments about the minutes?
No, if they look good, I would move to approve the minutes from October 18th.
Okay, and I will second that. We'll take a vote. Councillor Flood?
I'm an aye.
I am also an aye. Meetings from 10/18/2021 approved 2-0 with one member in absentia. Okay, are there any, hearing what the agenda items are today, are there any members of the public here to discuss anything other than what currently appears on the agenda? By a show of hand, or preferably using the raise hand function. Okay, on the agenda, I'm just going to briefly move on slightly out of order to number 4, continuing business, the easement request.
Just letting you know, I do see that JP is trying to connect. Oh, here he is. He was stuck in the waiting room, like connecting. Here we go. Just so you know, we have our third member.
All right.
Okay.
Is he here?
JP, are you with us?
Feels like a seance. Oh, there he is. Oh, looks like he's connecting. I will wait for him to connect. All right. Good to see you, Councillor Kwasinski. We're just going to move slightly out of order. First to our item of continuing business, the easement request for utility conduits to service cellular communications tower on city-owned property at 32 Payson Avenue. We had approved this 3-0 to recommend to the council with a couple stipulations. That was to discuss this with the chiefs of fire and police, since it abuts the public safety complex, to speak with the city engineer and to speak to Eversource. So of those items, I have successfully heard back from item number 1. Neither the chief of fire or police has an issue with it. Incidentally, through that communication, I ended up having a discussion with Michael Owens, the procurement officer, and he had just reached out to the city attorney, who said that they had reviewed the easement request and they had no issues with it. I'm waiting to hear back from the city engineer as well as Eversource. Do either of the committee members have any? Oh, I see a hand up. Let me just get to the committee members first. Councilors Flood or Kwasinski, do either of you have any questions or comments so far about that process?
Not at this time.
Councilor Flood?
Nope, none here.
I think I saw Planner Bag's hand up.
Uh-oh.
I actually, because I've invited the city engineer to come for the South Street sidewalk discussion, and he texted me saying he's having trouble getting in. He was waiting in the waiting room, perhaps. So I didn't know, you might be able to put him on the spot if he joins about this item. I figured that's why I was going to chime in.
Don't see anybody in the waiting room. Is he in the right meeting?
I asked him if he was going from the website, the links. He said he was going to try again, so maybe he'll try.
Okay, I'm keeping an eye.
So, I mean, I think generally, the city attorney seems to have no issue with it. I think we can also discuss this at the main meeting too. If he doesn't come, I want to try to, in the interest of keeping the meeting moving, once again, any further comments from the two counselors on the committee?
None here.
No? Okay.
No, I'm just glad to, I appreciate that you're checking with the chiefs, and that was important, and we should be all aboard.
Okay, great. So why don't we move on to one of our two items of new business. That's the South Street sidewalk easement at 334 Maine. I reviewed the materials, and I think I have some questions, but I feel that probably a presentation. I know the planner's here, and so that it might be good to first get some feedback from the planner about this project. I know this is time sensitive as well, but before I turn it over to him, are there any comments or questions from either of the members of the committee?
Nope, anxiously awaiting.
Councilor Flood?
Not at this time.
Okay, Planner Bag, do you feel comfortable kind of presenting the scope and intention of this, what we're looking at here?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. And the city engineer is saying he's getting a message that the host has another meeting in progress. So I'm not clear what's happening with him. I think he's around. He's trying to get in. He was also going to be here to talk about the South Street sidewalk. So, there is information in the board's packet, the city council's packet from October 20th. So that's where the actual request is at. And as we often do, it's referred to this committee. So this is the first time that we're talking about it in this committee. What we're trying to do, I think Councilor Zaret mentioned it, is we're trying to act fast. And sometimes as a municipality that can be tricky. And why we're trying to act fast is if you've been down Main Street, there's a huge paving project underway. They're also replacing catch basins on each side. And it's a little bit of a Hail Mary, but we're trying to get that same contractor to do a change order as part of their ongoing project and build this sidewalk on South Street that has been discussed for quite some time. There's a plan which I can pull up if that's helpful. I also have Google Maps pulled up just for some reference points. But the sidewalk has been kind of an issue identified since at least 2016, 2017. It's in our complete streets prioritization plan it's basically if you're walking up South Street towards Main Street, you have no more sidewalk. It turns into a parking lot. And then in 2017, it was picked up in part of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's review of the whole intersection. So the intersection itself at Main Street and South has been a topic of conversation for a long time. And just for big picture, I think it is important to mention this, that, we would like to see a light get installed on Main Street. But it's a Mass DOT controlled intersection, and the research shows that there are not enough criteria met to warrant a light. So we're kind of stuck. What our consultants suggest though is that after the school comes online, and a period of time goes by, the numbers could be recounted. and there might be a chance that the numbers go up high enough to warrant a light signal, and that would be beneficial overall. And then it would basically queue us up for like a 3 or 4 year look ahead at maybe having a light there. So in the meantime, we're talking about at least 4 years of new students traversing from kind of the north side of the South Street neighborhood across Main Street over this area that we're talking about for the sidewalk and then to the new school. And over a period of time, we reached out to the landowner about 2 months ago, and he very much agreed to meet us out there. We met out site with the city engineer, the DPW director, myself, and the property owner, and we talked about this corner. And he said, and we explained that we may need to take some of his property. It may require adjusting the parking at College Highway Variety. And he was open to the conversation, but he said he needed to see more detail. What are we actually talking about? And so the DPW director found some money to do the survey work. That was really the critical information that we didn't have, was survey. And so finally the survey was prepared, and it showed that a sidewalk is feasible. It has to connect to Main Street, so there has to be an ADA, handicapped accessibility, path across Main Street. It lands on the corner of the variety store's parking lot and then would connect to a sidewalk. But it would require us to take a relatively small portion of that property through a permanent easement. And so in the discussions more recently, we met out there, myself, the city engineer, the mayor, and the property owner met about 3 weeks ago. We met on the property and showed him the map, and he was agreeable to continuing the conversation about giving this property to the city. We had him, the owner, sign a right of entry form, which is required by Mass DOT for their portion. Now the gist of why we're here is that we're asking City Council to authorize the mayor to negotiate the easement agreement language and to execute it. And the reason why we're asking for that, even though we don't necessarily have everything, we don't have all the ducks in a row yet, is that with that authorization, we believe we can tell the contractor that we are ready to proceed, and they are really eagerly awaiting that. So there's a couple things that could derail this whole thing, which is the contractor is waiting for a paving date, and they don't really get a choice. And so leading up to this meeting, we did find out that the paving date for Main Street was November 11th and November 12th. So I think already at this point, it's very, very tenuous that we can have the contractor squeeze in the sidewalk before then. But my purpose in bringing this forward was to make sure that the city council was not part of the process that said, that we didn't have to say that city council was part of any reason why we couldn't make this happen. And so that's my goal. The easement here, thank you. I think Councilor Zara pulled this up. So it's a little faint to see, but there's a upside down triangle shape, and that the shapes within that, that's a sidewalk. It's a handicapped accessible sidewalk, and then it runs down the screen. That's an opening for the driveway and continues to run alongside the building. By the point where you get onto that map where it says Gran, that entire sidewalk portion is all on city property. So it's really that area at the top of the screen that we really need to acquire some land from the property owner to make this happen. I did want to share that I do actually, as of I think it came on Friday, I got language from the city attorney for the draft easement. So we do have a draft easement that I didn't get to transmit out to this group because I knew I was going to be here and I wanted to talk through it. But we will not have the survey. So to create the easement, you need a surveyed meets and bounds description of this triangular piece, and we will not have that. It's just that's the piece that is probably going to lag on. But I do have the draft easement language, which at some point, either with a question I can share it on screen. Or we could certainly talk about it on Wednesday with the full city council. But I feel like I'm missing something, but that's the overview that I'll give, and then I'm more than happy to answer questions. And the city engineer's been texting me this whole time, which is rather distracting. I haven't seen what he said yet. So with that, I'll stop for a moment.
Questions from members of the committee?
I do, but I wonder if Jeff has reading his text. I'll let him do that for a moment.
I don't think the city engineer is going to be able to get in for whatever reason. He's not finding his way to the meeting. We've talked extensively about this, so depending on the nature of the question, I think we can navigate most questions.
Jeff, I'm looking at the map and I'm having a bit of difficulty seeing exactly what is described as the easement. Which triangle you're talking about? I see some, okay, that's the red line is the triangle of the easement. It was.
Yeah, I could see counselors there trying really hard. So I think that's great. Yeah.
I see you drawing it. Oh, you're doing a great job.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
See me wiggling that?
The beauty of having Adobe Pro, you can edit the PDF.
That's a good advantage. So that I just wanted to be sure I was clear as to what that area was. And what it doesn't show me is it shows what's been taken, but what effect does that have on the business enterprise is my question.
Yeah, if Councilor Zared, if I were able to share my screen, I think I can try to find, I have that Google map pulled up, and I can show that we can get to we can talk about that in certainly general terms. Okay. So we should be seeing the back of the convenience store here.
Oh, yes.
So it sounds like you're not concerned with the rest of it. I'll jump up to the front here. A couple benchmarks for where we're looking on the plan. When we go back to the plan, this guardrail is shown on the plan. And so in general terms, the parking for this SUV here, that will likely stay. And then some version of 32 feet will become open. And the way that we mocked it up was that a car would be able to pull in to the very beginning of this guardrail and kind of pull in from South Street and nose in some portion of this first part of the guardrail. The rest of this at the street level will get cut off and become a curb. So we've been talking to the owner, and I did email him the draft easement language this morning, and my goal would be for him to maybe join at city council on Wednesday. I think it'd be important for you all to hear that he understands this, but that's the idea, is that right now, all the way on the left here, this granite curb, I mean, cars are nosing in, the butt end of the car is hanging out over the road. And we do want to prohibit parking for most of the length of that guardrail, because then the butt end of the cars would be hanging over the sidewalk. We want to give a little latitude to the owner, and that there might be one parking space kind of up at the front of this building here, where the Volkswagen is definitely an area that would probably be lost to. You can see the crosswalk comes over Main Street, and then this entire corner here becomes sort of it becomes portion of the sidewalk. And so we did talk to the owner about that. This first space was pretty clear. And then if you can see, there's the pavement's in really poor condition. This has all been milled out now, but this little pothole here, that might be approximately where the opening for the driveway begins. And it will extend 32 feet.
What you describe as the curb cut?
Curb cut, yep. And so through talking with the city engineer and the city's design consultants, we agreed. We started at 24 feet, and we agreed to extend it open to 32 feet, which would give that additional parking space to the store.
So when you say 24 feet, you started what at 24 feet?
We started the discussion with the landowner about an opening of 24 feet wide.
There would be an opening from the Main Street side somewhere toward along South Street. That's what you're saying, 24 feet opening.
Yeah, well, you would pull into South Street, and then there would be a
25 feet of curb cut.
Yep.
Yeah, when we go back to the survey map, we can show you, Councilor Kwasinski.
Okay, yeah, and it's really
What
this.
I'm trying to get at is the access that will exist after the sidewalk gets built, and the number of parking spaces that are lost.
Right. We do not have the ability to calculate the number. We have not calculated the number of parking spaces lost. I would say that almost all of the parking on this side is not conforming to, we have no history of how it got built. We don't understand exactly how it got built, but I would argue that none of it's conforming. So our negotiation is that we would go from a 24 foot wide entrance and exit. So for vehicles to enter and exit, to 32, which would provide one parking space, kind of nosing into the building, one kind of proper space. And I'll stop sharing my screen, and maybe Councilor Zare could put up that other map. I think between the two, Councilor Kwasinski, we might be able to hack our way into an answer for you. If that's a question that remains for you, Councilor Kwasinski, we can sharpen our pencils and come up with some kind of diagram for Wednesday. If that's an important.
I think it's important for the owner and anyone else who would be interested to know exactly what spaces are missing, what kind of, how many spaces there were originally on their lot, and how that would affect their business, whether or not somebody could still run a business.
Right. I think that's fair. I think we have certainly discussed that with the owner, and I think you're airing it out for the public, which I think is fine. I think the other thing I will say is I think at least two, I've been in communication with two residents of the South Street neighborhood who I think are planning to come on Wednesday. So I think that they're the flip side of that coin, which is the people who have been calling for several years to make this a sidewalk. So I think you should hear both, and I think you will.
Please don't get me, misunderstand me. I'm not advocating that we not have a sidewalk. I would agree that this is a dangerous, as it's developed over time, as a more and more dangerous situation, especially with cars nosing in, edging over what someone would consider to be a sidewalk or not a sidewalk, or if there's a walkway, you kind of have to go into the road. I'm glad we're working on this and we're able to work on it. I just was curious how many spaces, because I think it lends itself to impact on a business operation.
We'll Councilor Zare, if it's okay, we'll circle back to this. And what it's reminding me of is the fact that we are trying to do the best we can with time. The other thing that we're up against was some funding. We have some funding that's available till December 31st, and so it's $28,000. It's not a small amount that we have talked to Mass DOT. It's transferring over from our shared streets project. That's the one that we put up the rapid flashing beacons on Pleasant Street and on Williston Ave and stuff. They're willing to allow us to reprogram that money for this. So we also didn't want to lose that opportunity. But my point actually was that the boxes, there's a box that's parallel to the building right here, and that was supposed to be representing a car. And then the two boxes up front, those two are supposed to represent cars. But what occurs to me is that we never updated, we haven't had a chance to update the drawings. That car would come in South Street and park in, where it's shown. But as we widen the curb cut to 32 feet, which this plan only shows 24, we in theory would be able to pull in a car nose in against the building. And so it would take that one car and it would turn it perpendicular. So you'd get one car to park nose into the building, and then you would have the 24 feet for cars to enter and exit. Technically, as I was saying before, that access point to the front should not be clogged up with cars. It's dangerous for, emergency access vehicles and things. And so, in any kind of proper site plan, there would be a 24-foot wide access way, which would probably eliminate most of that parking in the front. So the conversation we had with the owner was that, he would work towards formalizing the parking in the back, which you can see gets a 24-foot wide curb cut in the back. And then, with configurations, you could get 3 spaces. He mentioned possibly trying to talk to the abutting property owner about leasing some spaces because it's a paved open area in the back. I guess the last thing I'll mention is that we've done really a lot to try to work cooperatively with the property owner, and it seems to be going well. But I think there's a reality here that the importance of this project is that we would probably commence a process to take it, but I think the process would be elongated. We would miss any opportunity to work with the current contractor, and we'd have to be paying more for mobilization and things like that to revisit this. But I think once the school opens, I think this is really an inevitable project. So I think our goal was to do it friendly, and so far we are working friendly with the owner. So I heard your questions. I'll circle back to the city engineer and our design consultant, and I'll double back to the owner too, to see if I can encourage him to come and have him kind of make a statement, understanding that he may lose some parking spaces here.
Councilor Flood, any questions or input?
Just a comment that I think this definitely is moving in the right direction. I know that property, drive by it a lot, and it probably would just be helpful to have some clearly marked parking spots there. It gets to be quite a jigsaw puzzle pileup of vehicles and pedestrians. And so I'm glad that the property owner is working with us on this. And I think it's much needed. Any improvement we can do in that area is much needed. And are there flashing beacons on the corner here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I think that's fantastic. That's going to be huge. So that's my only comments.
Planner Bag, okay, if I'm reading this correctly, where the sidewalk is being proposed, is that next to that asphalt area that you showed us before, kind of that wedge piece of asphalt that's on the South Street side of the building, and then the sidewalk would be constructed basically in where part of the street is right now? Am I understanding that correctly or no?
It's a great question. Could you zoom in a tiny bit on this map? Yep, and then pull it just down a little bit. Okay, that's good. So this is a little bit difficult, but in the black line is proposed and the gray behind it is existing. And so at the top where you can see that the crosswalk comes across, there's the word grand, and then right underneath it is that that gray. That's the existing granite curb. That's what that means there. And then that's just a reference point, which we'll be able to see that in a picture. And then the other, where the car, that squares, the upper one, says bit on top. Then that other curb is that asphalt curb that got put in by Mass DOT when they were doing their work. That's existing. And then that solid horizontal line just below the word bit, that line right there, yep, that's the property line. So this property kind of has evolved over time. It's in a bit of a pickle because quite a bit of that the front section is owned by MassDOT, and then along the side, there's not a lot of property there, and it's the evolution of the uses over time that kind of leads us to this just little bit of a predicament we're in, where the owner, I think it's mostly the previous owner, has paved over quite a bit of we suspect there used to be a sidewalk behind the building that just got paved over and eliminated over the years. And now, to adjust and to meet ADA requirements, they also talked about keeping the radius for trucks. So trucks have to come off Main Street, turn right. That was one of the main reasons why we couldn't just take this whole thing off of his property, is because then we would not be able to meet basic turning requirements for trucks. So we have ourselves a pickle in that area. So the granite curb Oh, and Councilor Zaret is kind of that reference point as to where we're at in the image, and I can show up the image if it's important now.
No, that makes more sense.
Okay.
So what's the general window here at our bag? I just want to make sure that, I understand this is time sensitive, and I was initially under the impression we had to have some sort of recommendation at this meeting. If I'm hearing you correctly, we have a little bit more time to gather some answers, or is that correct?
So things we're literally having this afternoon. So this afternoon is when, I'm sharing information. The public paving schedule. I know everyone's probably waiting for Main Street to get paid, but what I was told this afternoon is the paving date has been given to the contractor as November 11th and 12th. So it really puts a pinch on us. I would say that not all bets are off though, because we're asking the contractor if there's any way possible that he can get in here in the next week and a half and put at least the curb. So the big issue is that if they pave, it's a big operation, and you can see the dashed line that goes across South Street here. That's where they milled that off, and that's where they're going to pave to. I asked a question, I didn't get a response before the meeting tonight, but they're going to pave, and if we do this a little bit later, then they're going to have to cut out the new pavement and put in the curb and build a sidewalk. And so my question was, is that absolutely a no-no to do? But they're going to have to probably do that anyway to cut into that new pavement to set the curb. The contractor was saying that they would possibly, if they can't make it happen in the next couple of weeks, they would come back in the spring. That would relieve a little bit of pressure, but I don't know if the city would get charged a fee for remobilizing and that kind of thing. And so my goal, if we can get some clarity or get the majority of the council feeling comfortable enough to allow the mayor to finish negotiating the easements, that would still be the target for Wednesday. I think that clarifies that the city has voted on the easement. But time is really of the essence. And my goal was really just to have this say, like, the city process and getting this easement in place was not the factor that prevented us from trying to do this.
So based on that, understanding that the general time frame, or at least certainly requested time frame, do either of the committee members have some contingencies to put forward so that we can make a recommendation with some contingencies to offer to the council for Wednesday? And assuming those can get answered, we can move forward. I know Councilor Kwasinski, you had some reasonable thoughts. I just want to make sure those are recorded and brought forward, so at least we can make a partial recommendation or recommendation based on, a few things being answered. What are both Councilors Kwasinski and Flood, what's your thoughts and comfort level with that?
I'm happy to make this recommendation as long as the owner is on board with it. And I think whether or not we could just get a written statement, or if they can actually attend the meeting Wednesday, I think for me that would suffice. A friendly process sounds like the best way, and it sounds like they're already exploring future parking configurations. So again, I'd be happy to support moving forward with this, and just it would be nice to hear either in writing or in person from the owner, so we're all on board with that process and their participation.
Councilor Kwasinski, thoughts?
I think Councilor Flood brought up some good points. If we proceed amicably, and I think that makes eminent sense, and would certainly be happy to authorize the mayor to move forward. In fact, I'm considering granting the mayor full authority to move forward without that provision. I think that's something we ought to consider as a possibility also, because of the urgency and importance of the project. I would like to see the sidewalk in for the opening of the new school. I would like to see all of that together. I don't want to have that be a holdup here. I think the time has come and I'm glad this is coming to fruition now, rather than later. It's important to have a sidewalk there. I think it's also important if we can negotiate an amicable solution. And that's my hope that we can. I don't have any specifics except that I think the city has an obligation to be very clear to the landowner what is being exchanged, how that will impact the business, because I see this as different from exchange from land that got swapped on Main Street. I'm sorry, on Union Street. On Union Street, there is alternative parking available. That is, if there are, I understand some business may be coming before us in the next several weeks or within a month or two regarding easements for Union Street. Well, those easements, yeah, if an owner loses X number of square feet, that, okay, there's X number of square feet, there may or may not be a parking space that's involved. And in any case, even if there were a parking space loss, that impact on their business would be lessened because downtown you have street parking. Here, there isn't for a business owner the opportunity to have street parking available. So you lose a space, you lose 2 spaces, you lose 3.
Apaga la bocina ahora, please. Apaga la bocina ahora, please.
I think I heard Councilor Gomez in the background.
Sorry, yes, it was me.
His voice is working here. That's good. So I think that's just important. I wanted to be clear about that and let it fall where it may, but I believe the city has the interest and needs the sidewalk. So I would definitely support that. I would support a taking one way or the other. But I think it's all good, important for all parties to understand what they're getting into either way.
Planner Bag, I think Councilor Kwasinski also raised a good point. Rather than get embroiled within the committee about the parking, is it fair to say that those parking spaces might be part of the negotiation between the mayor and the business owner?
It's possible, but I feel like we've already done the little bit of negotiation that would happen. I mean, in all honesty, like because this plan shows a 24-foot wide opening, and we talked to the owner about going to 32 feet. I will work on getting the revised plan. I don't know if it exists, but we can work on trying to get that illustration. But that was the thing that we talked about. You know, I hear what is being asked. I think it's totally fine. I think I had talked to the owner about trying to get here tonight, and it just didn't. I didn't literally make a phone call, which is probably what I should have done this afternoon. But I'll try that for Wednesday. You know, in the discussion with the owner, you know, there is, I think Councilor Kwasinski touched on something, especially with regard to Union Street, is that there, and aside from parking, there would technically be a dollar value assigned to this piece of land. And I will get confirmation, but the owner said, I don't want that. Like that, whatever that dollar value is, we don't know what it'll be, but it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be $100,000. It's not going to be, he said, I'm going to donate that. So he's not asking us for an appraisal. And so that's something that I will confirm. I think that's a really important information for the council to know that he's understanding that there would be a value and I'm going to donate that. We basically begged a couple property owners on Union Street to consider that same thing, because in a lot of cases, the appraisal itself is going to cost more than the value of the parcel of land that we need to take for Union Street. If it's okay, Councilors, there, I know we're going long, but because I think we're asking for a little bit of exception from the normal process for council to authorize the mayor to go forward. I wanted to show you the easement, the draft easement, which I will, if I can, I will present to council on Wednesday, but I figured this is a really good opportunity for the subcommittee members to see that the easement itself is not terribly complicated. It's really 2 pages, but first paragraph is information about the property. It says for $1, right? So this is, you know, this is how we say that it's being donated. Granting, the second paragraph, I don't think it has a lot of meaning. It's establishing the city. So then the third paragraph is really the instrument, the action that we're going to take. So for the purpose of constructing, maintaining, and repairing a public sidewalk for the use in the means or manner in which a public sidewalk may be used, such sidewalks, and we're going to refer to the plan. So even, our idea is that we would reference this plan for purposes of consistency, and then we would have a final plan that would be consistent with that. Such sidewalks shall be constructed and maintained at the city's sole and absolute expense. It may be used for all the purposes in which public sidewalk may be used, providing that the grantee, its successors, or assignees shall have the responsibility for snow removal as provided in the ordinances of the city. So that's the easement scope right there. I want to be really, I know we're kind of going, sorry, I'm getting lost in my Zoom screen here. I'm sharing my screen. I know that we're moving this forward. I did send this document to the applicant and his attorney this afternoon. So I think by Wednesday, if there's any kind of change in heart, we'll know. But if there's total agreements, then I don't think it's going to be a challenge to get that and have it communicated for Wednesday. So,
are the members of the committee satisfied with the answers from the planner and the need for, or the potential for input at the full city council level?
I'm satisfied.
I'm pretty clear that we've fleshed out the plan, and I think the owner can conclude what effect that has on the parking for himself and for his business. So I think the business that's currently there is based on turnover, and somebody comes in, it's a quick stop. I can't get in, I can't park. Well, I'll go somewhere else. I think all of that's pretty clear. I appreciate having that survey be done before we get into it, so that at least we can look at that. I'm good with moving this along.
Okay, well then I would be happy to entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the full city council to allow the mayor to enter into negotiations regarding this easement.
So I would make a motion to recommend the full council authorize the mayor to negotiate an easement with the property owner at 334 Main Street in regards to the South Street Sidewalk project proposal.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Councillor Flood and a second from Councillor Kwasinski. I will take a vote. Councillor Flood?
I am an aye.
Councillor Kwasinski?
Aye.
I am also an aye to recommend. Motion passes 3-0 to recommend to the council. Actually, I went a little out of order. I'm happy to hold on to that. Are there any members, a show of the raised hand feature, are there members of the public who would like to make comments on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see anyone. At this point in the agenda, we have arrived at the conservation restriction request from the Lathrop community, and I intend to recuse myself and exit the meeting at this point. President Conniff, would you like to sit in as a third member?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Yes, I would.
Wonderful. Well, I left the seat very warm for you. And so thank you, everybody. I am going to step out now. The meeting will not end because Councilor Flood's running it from the city side. So have a great night, and I'll see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councilor Zaret. Councilor Flood, I see you.
Yep. So just point of order, does Councillor Conniff, are you becoming Chair Zaret or how? No. So I'm hosting and I will guide this. Okay. Just checking okay. So we will move on then to the conservation restriction request from the Lathrop community. And we'll start with counselors. Counselor Kwasinski or Coniff, do you have any questions regarding this proposal?
I do, but I will defer to Councillor Kwasinski as he's a member of this committee.
Okay.
I was just looking forward to the presentation, so I do not have any questions at this time.
So, Jeff, are you going to be doing a presentation on this? Because my question is really around the definition of a conservation restriction. What does it mean?
You have the pleasure of having two Jeffs on the call.
I know.
Oh, Jeff Squire and Jeff Bagg. Oh my goodness. Either Jeff is fine.
I don't, the bringing this to council, I really appreciate Lathrop's working with us as we kind of figure this out. It's a little bit different than a normal process where this is not like a planning department proposal, but, I'm here to kind of shepherd. And if it's okay with everyone and the councilors, I did want to just highlight one thing, which is the role of city council in this, because it's not something you see every day, and certainly in my 4 years I haven't seen it either. So there we are. What I have pulled up real quick is a section of Mass General Law, and I just wanted to shoot this up real quick, and then I would turn it over to Lathrop because they have all the details that you want to know. But in Mass General Law, it requires multiple entities to sign off on a conservation restriction, including a city council and a city. So I highlighted the paragraph, and what you're being asked to do is to vote that the conservation restriction is in the public interest, and assuming that it's, the public who lives in Easthampton. So this Easthampton's public interest is being met by the conservation restriction. And so you're not a rubber stamp in this, you're kind of the final say. And so what you get is a lot of information prepared by others and to make that determination. And then, let's see, I was going to highlight that you have information before you from a lot of different parties, including the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, Lathrop as the property owner, and Kestrel Land Trust, who will hold the CR. And then you are making this determination that it's in the public interest. And so you have some breadth of information available to make that. And so I think with that, I just wanted to kind of highlight that that's really your vote. Your vote is to kind of determine that the CR is in the public interest. And in this case, the city doesn't really have any ownership in this. Some CRs the city takes and manages, but you are kind of fulfilling this last criteria of other, I think it's the paragraph before, I apologize, it's approvals of restrictions. It's a certificate, so you're going to offer your certified vote, including the Environmental Affairs Office, the Mass Historic Commission, the Commissioner of Food and Agriculture, the Director of Housing and Urban Development, the City Council. So you're kind of in that line of people who approve this. So I think with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Jeff Squire, and I'll be around for other questions that might pop up for the city.
Great. Thanks.
Jeff, do you need screen? I'll give you screen share abilities. Here we go.
That would be great.
There we go.
Thank you. So just real quickly, I'm Jeff Squire from the Berkshire Design Group here on behalf of Lathrop. And just real quickly, I'll sort of just take you through a brief presentation to explain how we got here and make ourselves available to any questions that the commission may have. So this all stems from the original special permit that was granted for Lathrop, originally back in 1996, then finally again in 1998 with a few other revisions and amendments. But as part of that, as part of those permit approvals, it required that there were roughly 78 acres that need to be placed into a conservation restriction. And since that time, for various reasons, that just never happened. And so we're finally here to try and finalize that requirement, condition of the original special permit or the amended special permits. And so what you see here is an outline of Lathrop's property in Easthampton. It includes, sort of what I'm outlining here, and it doesn't include these this larger parcel. So the conservation restriction entails, the better part of the western part of the property, as well as a chunk of land, sort of in the center and below, to the south of the existing development where there isn't really any potential for development. There's a number of trail systems and whatnot that exist back here that Lathrop can certainly speak to, but it's a system of trails and that they've been managing both for the residents and others, since as long as they've been in existence. And so hopefully my screen just switched. Everybody can see this, the updated PDF. And so as part of our contract with Lathrop and again, as Jeff Bagg pointed out, as a result of Kestrel being willing to hold this conservation restriction on behalf of Lathrop, we have now defined the larger areas for protected open space for this conservation restriction, which will entail what is 66 and a half acres in the western part of the property, and then on the other parcel, the second area here, which encompasses just over 11 acres. And so all of this really is to say that it's been a long time coming since this condition was originally issued, but the intent is certainly for Lathrop to fulfill their conditional requirements of the original permit and put this land into a conservation restriction now that Kestrel's been willing to hold this restriction. And again, just to highlight a couple of things that Jeff said regarding land ownership. So this property will remain and always, for all intents and purposes, forevermore be Lathrop's property. This is not property that involves city property. There's been no public funds that are being used to bring this conservation restriction to fulfillment. But again, it's all private property. There are a number of trail systems here that are open and available to the public, but I just want the commission to recognize, as Lathrop can certainly speak to, that this is a senior housing development. They are certainly open to the public visiting this trail system and walking this trail system, but depending on the circumstances and other events, they do want to at least restrict or make available the opportunity to close or prohibit access if the need arises. But certainly the intent is to allow this trail system to be publicly accessible and adjoin some of the abutting trail networks. So with that, I will leave it, and just to say that, I think we're just seeking your approval that this conservation restriction is in the public's interest, and that we're finally here to finalize the last of the few conditions that were from some of the original permits. So, thank you.
Can I also just jump in here just to add to that presentation? I wanted to answer Councillor Conniff's question about what a conservation restriction is. So in the green shaded area, that would be the land that would be encumbered by this restriction. So the conservation restriction gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And essentially what it does is prevent Lathrop from ever building on that green area. It prevents them from constructing any structures, doing any mining under the prohibited use section, basically sort of doing anything to that land other than maintain it in its natural state. It's permanent. So if Lathrop ever did sell the property, the restriction would stay in place. It's not dissimilar from Chapter 61. If you're familiar with forestry or recreation or agricultural current use for property tax reduction, but the main difference is the conservation restriction is permanent, and it applies to all successor owners. So it's, in essence, they're giving up their right to do anything with this property. And the job of Kestrel as the holder of the restriction is to enforce the terms, to make sure that Lathrop never does anything to the property that in any way violates the terms of the restriction. So once a year, Kestrel will come out and walk the property, probably meet with staff, and just make sure that everything is consistent. And so that's a conservation restriction. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. And just one point as to why this is in the public interest. I just want to point to the actual restriction itself. So the way we wrote this document was many of us spent a lot of time on the property and analyzing the natural resources that exist there. And so the conservation values on these particular 78 acres are for the following. So open space protection, the premises abuts land already conserved along the north and west boundaries and is a critical link within a large swath of protected open space known as the Park Hill Priority Protection Area, and is the largest area of contiguous agricultural land in the city of Easthampton. So the land will be part of a much larger area of protected land that creates the largest block of protected agricultural land in the city. The soils on this property are quite significant. 20 acres are prime farmland, according to USDA, Natural Resources Council Conservation Services. The wildlife habitat on this property is quite significant. There are 3 certified vernal pools, and the property contains 50 acres of forest land, and the dominant tree species, well, I won't get into all the different tree species, but in terms of the habitat around Bassett Brook, which is really the main feature here, what will be protected, there's a lot of habitat that pass through this corridor that will be enabled to continue to enjoy the Bassett Brook, the water quality protection, as well as the wetlands and the water supply protection. So those are just a few of the conservation values that exist here that will forever be protected because of this conservation restriction.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great explanation. And then, so circling back around, Councillor Kwasinski, do you have any questions? Or Connor? You are muted. There you go.
I think we've unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you very much for that excellent description. I believe that this is a great use of land, a great restriction in terms of forever preserving the farmland, the forest land. My question had to do with, I understood that you would be, as part of the trail development and the trail workings, doing some work there. Were you able to work out how you're going to be doing your stream crossings?
So Lathrop is in the process. We're currently in negotiations with the Conservation Commission to divide the project or their goals into a couple of different permitting paths. One being a limited project for restoration of some of the habitat, the meadow habitat that exists, and as well as the maintaining the trail system, which under Mass Wetland Protections law allows for maintenance and construction of narrow pedestrian footpaths, trails in this case, and any of the wetland crossings, quote unquote wetland crossings, we will deal with as separate permitting pieces, but based on all the other exemptions and permitting paths, we're confident that will be all worked out with the Conservation Commission.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. I look forward to that being improved. I think it'll be great for the residents and for any visitors of the public that are allowed to visit the site. With regard to your agriculture, I understand that some of the land is now in agriculture. Could you describe that for us a bit, and what isn't in currently being farmed?
So there are certainly portions of the property that are being farmed now. I think any of the land, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think any of the land that's included with the conservation restriction has historically been hay fields, not so much recently, isn't so much an active agriculture as it is the maintenance of those open fields as pasture and meadow place as a landscape typology, as you know, versus forest land or you know, something like that. So a lot of those aren't in active agricultural practice, and certainly, you know, there's a number of acres in that overall conservation restriction that include, you know, BVW, wetlands and or riverfront area. So, you know, a lot of that area has never been farmed historically. And so, yeah, I think, you know, the active farming area, we've tried to keep out of, you know, a large portion of the conservation restriction area to, you know, to enable that activity to continue in the future.
You mean, did you mean keep out or keep in? I think the point I wanted to make is that the land will forever be available for agriculture. So should Lathrop choose to start a community garden or have a farm for its residents, the land is forever protected as open space.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could lease out a portion and have
Sure. Yeah, it's surrounded. There are significant APR lands all around it in ag right now.
It's important, I think, to keep that available as time goes on and to have farmland. We're losing so much of it on a regular basis. So,
yes.
I think that's an important step. That's my questions for the moment. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the members of the public present? So I think we can entertain a motion. Oh, Jeff has his hand raised. Hi.
I'll get in before that motion. I know that I can't talk after that motion happens. I think it's just to clarify the when Ms. Robica was identifying why it's of public interest. Were you reading from the CR? I think that would just be okay, because I think that's you know, for purposes of city council, kind of any kind of justification, kind of finding that language in the CR. I think you did a great job, better than me actually. But like to identify that it does really support and complement the other protected parcels in that area, and just for fodder, you know, that is mapped and identified in our open space and recreation plan. So that area that Ms. Robico mentioned is the Park Hill protection area. So that lingo kind of comes out of our open space plan. So I really compliment you on picking up on that and citing that as one of the reasons why it's in the public interest. And so I just wanted to reiterate that that's in the CR, that language. So thank you.
And you know, I failed to state the very obvious reason is that your planning board is requiring this conservation restriction. It's sort of like a circular way of saying a government body is requiring this conservation restriction be put in place is sort of in the public interest then.
Right. Thank you.
I believe the government body had required it as part of the special permit process, and overall we will grant a permit for you to build what you're going to build, provided you do A, B, and C, and D, which is create a conservation restriction over
and protect the important open space. Right.
So with that being said, if
I believe Councillor Coniff, did you have you had your hand raised briefly?
It more or less was articulated by Councillor Kwasinski just now.
Okay, fantastic. I do have some language drawn up. Can I make the motion? Would that?
You certainly may.
Yeah. So I think, and Jeff can tell me if this language sounds like what is needed. So I would make a motion to recommend the full city council support the conservation restriction request from the Lathrop community, as it is in the public's best interest due to its many benefits named therein. Does that get the job done?
We think so. We pulled. We did go back and found another couple CRs that had that same language in there. So that falls in line with the city council past votes on these matters.
Fantastic. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We'll take a vote. I am an aye. Flood is an aye.
Kwasinski and I.
And I, just for clarity for the public, my purpose in being here was to ensure that there would be no diversity of votes. So I break the tie, as it were. But since you guys are in agreement, there's no need for me to vote.
Great. Motion passes. And that is new business, continuing business. I think we did everything we have to do. I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless I'm incorrect. Jeff?
The point of order for the purpose for the Lathrop folks.
Yes.
Is there any time frame for Wednesday? I have not looked at the agenda for Wednesday. I don't know what's on it, but is there any, just arrive at 6, or maybe President Coniff can chime in just when this item might, I know you can't tell when exactly, but they're going to come on Wednesday to be present too. So
I think she may have frozen.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I think JP, I think you froze.
Green has.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be discussed during the property readout of the committee readout of property, and we'll discuss it then. You know, I will say that this does not strike me as anything complex. It's a requirement of a prior agreement of the zoning, I guess, or the changes that they made. So this is probably 10 years too late or 20 years too late, and it should have been done a while ago, I'm guessing. But it feels very uncomplicated to me, but I think that we could probably get it voted on during the committee meeting. Now, having said that, Jeff, if you think it makes sense for us to move, you know, so these folks don't have to stay on the call for an hour and a half, if you want to move it up in the agenda and we can do the property committee readout earlier in the agenda, I'm open to that as well. Whatever if you think that makes sense, then we can do that.
yeah, I mean, I totally defer to you. It's just like, you know, for people who don't go, you have the beginning portion of the meeting is public speak, then there's a public hearing at 6:15, and then typically, right, President Coniff, then after that public hearing is when the committee reports would happen. So I just wanted to get a sense of that for these folks.
Yeah, we can certainly move it up on the agenda, so because it may be 7 o'clock before we get to it, and so depending on how long the public hearing goes, I mean, it could be 6:30. I'm not sure, but we can kind of play it by ear, and I'm happy to move it forward in the agenda if you folks are all going to attend, because there's no reason for you to be there for 2.5 hours, and hopefully we won't. None of us will be there for 2.5 hours.
Great. So arrive at 6, and then I think you may come up sooner,
Right?
or not, or maybe later. So
yeah, we do have. You know, in all honesty, we have some things that are of an informational, educational nature for just the council that we need to get nailed down for as a body. So that will also extend the time a little bit. So I want to be very clear that it's not going to be immediate. It may be a good hour into the meeting, but you know, better than an hour and a half.
Well, thank you.
Okay. With that being said, do we lose JP? I'm going to move to adjourn.
I second that.
Okay. Flood is an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much.